Makers is happy to be able to show this webinar series in collaboration with the Indonesian Heritage Society. And as has been the practice, we ask a member of the Heritage Society to provide the welcome remarks for the webinar series, for this webinar. So for this webinar, we are glad to have Mr. Michael Nicholson with us. He's the co-chair for projects museum at the Indonesian Heritage Society. In his early years, he worked for an oil and gas company based in Kalimantan, where he met his lovely wife, who was from Java. He is now retired and working partly for the Heritage Society, and also helping in public speaking clubs to help people learn and be more confident to speak in English. So over to you, Michael, for the welcome remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Christy. I wondered who you were talking about for a moment then. But no, it's fantastic to be here. It is such an interesting country that we live in. And the interest is obviously a lot to do with the culture and the artisans who work here, and it is just fantastic. So it is really, really good to be here. It's nice to see so many people here. And rather than listen to me talk, I suggest I give the floor back to our moderators, and let's hear what our speakers have to say. So I'll talk to you later on, but thanks for coming.
Thank you, Michael. And now to start this webinar, I'd like to invite our founder of Meet the Makers, Nia Flayam. She resides in Yogyakarta, and she is a batik artist herself, and she will provide an introduction to the webinars. I turn it over to you, Nia.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you to everyone for joining the Meet the Makers Kaleidoscope Changing Patterns webinar series. Thank you for the support of the Indonesian Heritage Society in joining us in this initiative to support the continuing traditions of Indonesian culture, particularly in the field of craft as art. The global pandemic has made annual fairs of Meet the Makers impossible for this year, and many artisans are struggling because of the impact this has had on their craft. We hope with these webinars we can contribute to their lives and livelihoods of our partner artisans by continuing to honor their work through these talks. Please know that 100% of your contributions will go directly to the artisans themselves. We hope you enjoy the webinar today. As this is only our ninth webinar, we are still learning and making improvements for the next sessions, so please bear with us. I turn over to Christy now, who will explain a few guidelines about the webinar, and she will also introduce our moderator.
Okay, and I also take this time to introduce our moderator for this afternoon. She's not new to our webinar series, and we thank her for attending many of these sessions and for also doing the introduction last time. So we'd like to introduce Ms. Elaine Chan. She is the Heritage Society Textile Group co-chair. She's coordinated the Heritage Society Museum conservation activities of the Textile Museum. She's also a volunteer guide at Museum Nasional Indonesia. So thank you very much, Elaine, for continuing with us on this webinar series. And now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Christy. A very good afternoon to everyone, and a warm welcome again to today's Meet the Makers webinar. This is the 9th out of 10 webinars in the Kaleidoscope Changing Patterns series. So we're nearly at the end, and we are glad that you could join us today. Yes, I'm the Secretary General of AHPADA, which is the ASEAN Handicraft Promotion and Development Association. But I just wanted to say that my immersion into the world of crafts really began in Jakarta with my participation in the activities of the Heritage Society. And of course, every serious craft lover in Indonesia would have had their appetites whetted at the annual Meet the Makers event here. And so it's really a great honor to be able to moderate this session today for both these organizations. So today's webinar is entitled Kulit, meaning skin in the Indonesian language. It is two types of skin that we will be exploring, both animal and plant skin, as well as the cultures of two islands, Java and Sulawesi. So Chrissy's been through the house rules. I'll just add as well that we will have a Q&A session at the end. So you can type your questions into the chat box, which I will pick up, but you may also ask your questions live in the session at the end. So without further ado, we'll move on to the speakers. We have three speakers today, so let me orientate you around today's session. We'll begin by delving into the complex world of Wayang Kulit, or shadow puppetry, a much beloved symbol of Javanese culture. Our first speaker, Pak Sagio, heads up Gria Kulit, which is more than just a center for ordering shadow puppets. It was the first place to make shadow puppets in the district of Kasihan, Bantul in Yogyakarta. The workshop also offers do we have his picture up on screen? Is that Dazzle? Okay, I think we're meant to have this photo up on screen, so it will come up eventually. So the workshop also offers the opportunity to study and to immerse oneself in the philosophy as well as the technique of making shadow puppets. Okay, there he is. Pak Sagio himself is an Indonesian cultural treasure and has for 30 years dedicated himself to the craft of making shadow puppets, which he learned from his father, Jaya Perwita. A shadow puppet maker from the Yogyakarta court, M.B. Prayitno, also taught Pak Sagio the characters of each of the shadow puppets. And it is this knowledge which is deepened over the years that has culminated in Pak Sagio creating the finest shadow puppets in the Yogyakarta tradition, which have been used by the most famous puppeteers in Indonesia, as well as collected by former Indonesian presidents. We'll then move on to looking at how this leather craft has been given new expression in contemporary times. So our second speaker is Ratri. So Dazzle, yes. So Ratri is a leather artisan also in Yogyakarta who heads up Mupakara, using the traditional punch leather technique in their leather products. Mupakara means caring or guarding in Sanskrit, not only of this leather technique, but also of the richness of nature and culture as reflected in their designs. With our third speaker, we move on to our second skin, that of Barkcloth, and our second island, that of Sulawesi, and that is to Novi and the work of Cinta, Bumi artisan. Cinta means love and Bumi means earth in Indonesian, and Novi will be speaking on their journey of working with barkcloth artisans from the Bada Valley of central Sulawesi. This barkcloth is combined with other natural fibers and dyed with natural dyes to create handmade pieces that she calls wearable poetry. So let's get started. We'll begin first with an introductory film of Pak Sagio created by Pak MJA Nasir. And I think he's around with Nia, so if he's there, he can give us a wave. But Pak Nasir is a sociologist, a filmmaker, a writer, and a poet. He is one of the founders of the Batang Heritage Society and has made numerous films on Indonesian craft and art. He has kindly assisted Meet the Makers many, many times with photography and films, and for this, the organization would like to record their gratitude. Okay, so we'll watch the film now. So, Mbak Foni.
Shadow puppets are one of the greatest cultural legacies of the Indonesian ancestors and will not be broken by the passage of time. These puppets are not only wall decorations or souvenirs or even performance attributes. Shadow puppets embody very deep philosophical meaning for humans. This is how it was explained by Ki Sagio, alias Mas Lurah Perwito Wiguno, a master leather puppet maker who was born in Bantul, Yogyakarta on 14th of July 1951.
Nami kula Pak Sagio. Pedamelan kula niku ndamel wayang menika wiwit alit umur 11 tahun niku kula pun gawe wayang. Saking daun singkong niku kula anyam dienggo wayang. Saking senenge Mas iso gawe ngoten niku. Saderengipun kula saged niku bapak kula saged ndamel wayang. Dados mergi kula saben dinten sok nunggoni bapak kula niku sajake dadi tertarik. Dados saking bapak kula niku terus kula belajar ten seorang abdi dalam kraton namanipun Mbah Bundu niku nggih. Nah sak sampunipun Mbah Bundu seda nika kula terus mlebet dhateng kraton. Tujuan kula ten kraton mboten wonten sanes namung kepengin nonton wayang, belajar wayang ingkang saestu ngayoja niku kados napa Mas ngaten nika. Anteping anak kula niku seneng sik gawe wayang gaya Jogja. Kenapa ngaten? Mergi kula piyambak nika asli tiyang Yogya, lahir wonten mriki, sesuk nek mati nggih dipendhem ten mriki. Kula ngombe banyu Ngayogya nggih tetep budayane Ngayogya tetep kula pertahanke, nderek mempertahankan wayang kulit gaya Ngayogya. Tahun 70 menika zaman semanten rak kula dianggep paling sae damelipun wayang menika sehingga pemerintah milih kula kangge pameran ten luar negeri ten Jepang zaman semanten niku ada wonten eksposisi dunia naminipun tahun 2008. Wong kula mboten ngimpi wong cilik iso dirawuhi sultane niku wis kanugrahan luar biasa. Nek Gusti Allah tesih marangaken nyawane titip ten nggen kula niku sak rampunge nyawa kula niku tetep gawe wayang niku pun. Cita-cita kula utawi sumpah kula dhateng awak kula piyambak. Pokoke nek mriki kula isih urip iki wonten wayang di daerah mriki.
The shadow puppets of Sagio have been played in many wayang performances by famous puppeteers like Ki Hari Sugito and Ki Timbul Hari Prayitno. In addition to many others in Indonesia who admire Ki Sagio's puppets, foreigners also come to study with him in his workshop.
Saya sudah sekitar 6 tahun dari 2014. Terus saya tertarik bikin wayang juga karena sering melihat bapak bikin wayang, jadi tertarik dan suka. Di waktu kecil dulu juga sering banget diajak lihat bikin wayang gini. Terus hampir tiap hari lihat pembuatannya. Lama-kelamaan kok juga suka gitu, pengen belajar. Putra putri Pak Sagio ada 3, yang saya anak ketiga dari 3 bersaudara. Kakak saya perempuan, dua-duanya udah ikut sama suaminya, dan saya yang paling muda tinggal yang melanjutkan wayang ini. Saya usahakan semampu saya dengan gaya yang sudah ada, yang sudah diciptakan dari dulu. Saya nggak akan merubah gaya kepakeman dari wayang ini. Saya tetap berusaha melanjutkan wayang ini.
Ana kidung rumeksa ing wengi teguh ayu luputa ing lara luputa marang bilai kabeh jin setan datan purun paneluan.
Okay, so now we'll hear from Pak Sagio himself. Iya, silakan Bapak Sagio.
Halo, selamat sore. Selamat siang semuanya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Pak Sagio.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Sagio. I'm an artisan making shadow puppets, and I live in Kasihan, Bantul, Yogyakarta. I started making shadow puppets from the time I was a small child. And my son, I have now taught how to make puppets. Story about Wayang. The first collector of purple leather puppets was the king of Kediri, Sri Jaya Boyo. In 939 AD, the puppets were made of palm leaves, and then in 1223 AD, it was developed by Raden Panji in Jenggolo. In 1283 AD, Raden Jaka, a Majapahit messenger, created puppets from paper which were known as Wayang Beber. In 1301, the first king Prabu Brawijaya, his son Sungging Prabangkara, was gifted in painting and was ordered by the king to draw and design Wayang Beber using colors according to scenes. After the fall of the Majapahit kingship and the government moved to Demak in 1437, Raden Pata, as the king, started to create puppets assisted by Islamic religious leaders, totaling 9 people who are called Wali Songo. Sunan Giri helped in creating the monkey puppet with 2 eyes. The performance in 1443 of Wayang Ricikan, created by Sunan Bonang, and Sunan Kalijogo created the performing screen. In 1443, Raden Pata created Wayang Gunungan. According to G.H.J. Hazin and M.R. Mangkudameja in 1443 AD, Sunan Kalijogo suggested each character should be united and all held together. In 1480 AD, Susunan Ratu Tunggal in Giri, representing the king of Demak, made small leather puppets and named them Wayang Kidang Kencanan. In 1541 AD, Raden Mas Jolang, king of Mataram II, made puppets which separated hands from the body. The hands were hooked to the shoulders so that they could be moved. In the period of Sultan Agung, the Wanda for 11 puppets was created. When I was young, I loved making puppets from cassava leaves. I wove these stems of the leaves together to make the wayang, as pictured on the left. And then in 1963, I studied from my father, Jaya Perwita, and I made puppets from buffalo leather, but not yet painting them. The process of making leather puppets now, I use the leather of the buffalo coming from the area of Sulawesi. Then it is stretched out and it's scraped to get the fur away. There's different kinds of tools, knives and various tools for this particular job. So you can get those which have been done completely or half done, and the color of the one that is completely done is a clear color. This is called Kulit perkamen. And this is 100% natural leather. The developments in 1980, I knew someone from England, and they asked me to make smaller puppets. So they said if the Wayang, the shadow puppets, were too large, it was difficult to take them home. So I made a 30-centimeter Wayang. In 1988, I made even smaller puppets, around 20 centimeters, specifically for souvenirs. And from the beginning of 1988 until now, so this size has been made by many of the Wayang artisans in Jogja. I also made a diversification of my products and the use of them. So I made decorations on walls, I made a Wayang on glass, on paper, and others to explore puppets as objects. But all of them have the theme of Wayang. Wayang is something that I love very much. So if my heart is happy, then I can make my work. The problems as a leather artisan in making puppets at this present time is that it is very difficult to find people who have the detailed concentration and the patience to make the shadow puppets. Everyone wants something that's instant, so this is difficult. I studied for a very long time. It's not just studying for a year or so. I've taught my son since he was young. I started teaching him in 2005, so he would love his cultural heritage and shadow puppets. Some foreigners like to study puppet making as well, and I receive them in my studio. Especially like to teach young people, for those who are interested. Because there are many young people who are not interested and don't want to spend time studying about this. These are students from the Institute of Art of Indonesia doing their masters. I have made other objects, and this is an example of necklaces and earrings. These are just my private experiments, and I haven't tried to market these at this point. But some people have encouraged me and said this is a very good idea. It's quite difficult to carve this leather in such a small format. I have also exhibited in many countries, including America and Thailand and Berlin. I was at the Smithsonian Institute in the Museum of Asian Art in 2013. And also in Germany, in Berlin. There are all kinds of quality of shadow puppets. We try to make the best quality possible. And the size like this, and the material that is of the best quality. I use real gold for the gold leafing of my puppets, so the quality is guaranteed. And this tradition of using gold leaf started with the first king of Jogja, Hamengkubuwono I, and was carried on by the second king, Hamengkubuwono II. Shadow puppets are not only painted, but they are also carved. And after they are carved, then the buffalo horn is used to make the stem. We get this from Sulawesi, and we have to have it sent from Sulawesi. I've made a new innovation, and I have made it in only black and white as a silhouette. If I feel like making it, I do, and if I am not in the mood, I don't. This is about a concern for our culture, a wish to continue to learn and study, to preserve the crafts that have been recognized by UNESCO. So that's all for me to present to you today. Thank you.
History and craft of Wayang Kulit. We'll of course return to Pak Sagio, and I can see a few questions in the chat already. But for the moment, we'll move on to our second speaker. And again, we'll begin also with a short film on Mupakara, which was edited by the Indonesia Nature Film Society, INFIS. INFIS is a film production unit of Rakam Nusantara Foundation based in Bogor, West Java, and strives to develop documentary films to convey the richness of Indonesian nature and culture to the public. The INFIS Meet the Makers collaboration is made possible with the support of the Ford Foundation. Okay, funny.
Nama saya Yasmine Ratribumi, lahir di Yogyakarta 22 April 1990. Saya adalah lulusan Kriya Seni Fakultas Seni Rupa Institut Seni Indonesia di Yogyakarta. Saya adalah pengrajin kulit dari Yogyakarta. Indonesia, negara yang mempunyai keragaman akan seni budayanya. Oleh karena itu, di dalam setiap sentuhan desain kami menceritakan kembali tentang kekayaan alam dan budaya di atas tanah yang kita pijak hingga merawat kebanggaan Nusantara. Maka tumbuhlah Mupakara. Di dalam bahasa Sanskerta, Mupakara memiliki arti merawat, atau menjaga, atau mengasuh. Mupakara hadir untuk mengangkat kembali tatah kulit yang dimiliki oleh pengrajin tas tatah tradisional di Yogyakarta. Yang menjadi ciri khas Mupakara adalah teknik membentuk pola dengan melubangi kulit. Di dalam masa pandemik ini, sangat susah untuk memasarkan barang kerajinan kulit dan handmade. Tetapi kami tetap fokus untuk berkarya dan menjaga mitra kami untuk tetap mendapat penghasilan. Harapan kami ke depan agar dapat mengajak lebih banyak pengrajin berkolaborasi untuk merawat asa Nusantara.
Terima kasih, selamat siang Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih pada kesempatan siang hari ini. Saya bisa memperkenalkan Mupakara. Seperti yang sudah kita lihat tadi di video, nama saya Yasmine Ratribumi. Saya dari Institut Seni Indonesia dan saya sudah mencoba berkenalan dengan kulit sejak tahun 2012 saat saya masih kuliah.
Well, when I was still in college. And then last year, we organized Mupakara on the 16th of August last year. The name Mupakara we have drawn from the Sanskrit word, which means to care for, to guard, or to nurture. Now I want to share a bit why do we exist? Why does Mupakara exist? Many of our people know that Yogyakarta is the center of artisans and craft. one thing that makes one thing that is unique of Yogyakarta is the leather bags that are ordained or have ornaments or decorations with carved leather art. And this technique of carving is known better in the art of Wayang, Javanese puppet. I know that this art and this craft is not as practiced as before and is starting to be in decline. And many of these artisans have already transferred their profession to others. And there's less generation of artisans in this craft. These are some of the challenges with this traditional art of carving on leather, because there are many mass production bags that are mass produced, factory based, that are of various styles, but are being offered at very cheap prices. And therefore, local traditional leather artists have difficulty in competing. Also, there are many modern machines now being used, and they can cut leather quickly and can make motifs quickly on mass-based production produced crafts, and therefore also affect the local traditional artisans. So many artisans have now transferred their profession. Part of my research was in how could I use this leather punch technique where you punch holes into the leather as part of my own artwork. Previously, I had already made bags, but they were clean and clear with no design like this. I tried to dig up different kinds of styles and tried to differentiate myself from others in the market. So I tried to see how to include elements of tradition on my bags. And therefore I discovered this technique of punched leather art. And I tried to make a few samples. And you can see here one example of one design in 2018 that in 2018, I was given an opportunity by the company Sampurna to be part of an exhibition where I tried to elevate and raise up this kind of technique and this kind of craft at the national level. And the appreciation for my work was great, and I received an award for best product development category. I know that this kind of work is not easy, and it's not just something you study once, but it takes a while to develop. So I went back to Jogja after this fair, and I tried to discuss with my different friends how we could continue with this kind of craft. And therefore, we quote unquote gave birth to Mupakara. And our vision is to develop high quality fashion accessories with using the leather punch technique to be able to compete globally and nationally. And we hope that with our efforts, we can preserve local wisdom in creating leather accessories and involve even more traditional artisans of Yogyakarta. And with this young age that we are at now, we have had some opportunities to join some fairs and exhibitions like the Meet the Makers Fair in Jakarta last year in October. And this was our first fair that we attended. And we are thankful to Meet the Makers for this opportunity. Our second opportunity to show samples of our work was when we collaborated with another designer of Yogyakarta. She is also a partner of Meet the Makers. Her name is Caroline Rica, and her brand is Wiro. During this fashion show, we collaborated together, and it was held in December in 2009 in Yogyakarta. Other challenges that we face, the artisans face, I have shared already a little bit. And these kinds of challenges are also experienced by the metal artisans, especially in the village of Kotagide, because there's so many cheap and mass-based produced products. This also affects the competitiveness of the local metal artisans, especially those making handmade metal art. So from the beginning, Mupakara wanted to support small scale artisans so that they can grow, and we decided to collaborate with the metal artisans in Kotagide, especially in making zippers for our Mupakara products, with our objective to have elements from our tradition on our products and to bring them together, to marry them. Here are some examples of how we've used some of the motifs. These are also batik motifs, and how we've been using them and delivering them on our leather products. Kuntrum is hereditary love, or a love reawakened. And the second motif is from Kawung, where the meaning is about a heart that is pure and clean. And we have applied this on our bags, and we call this bag the butterfly bag. Other challenges that we have faced is to go out of the comfort zone of our artisans. Most of the local artisans in Jogja are just used to making leather art, just the same kinds of shapes and designs, and not really being innovative. So we wanted to explore other designs and models. So we're trying to also provide awareness to other artisans to develop their skills, also through exposure activities. And we are also trying to find the proper market for our products. Third challenge of ours is equipment and infrastructure. We don't really have our own office yet, and the hardware for our work. So when we make one bag, we bring the cut materials and find somebody who can help us to put it together in our studio, and somebody can help us sew everything together. And our challenge is to find more artisans that can continue and have the willingness and desire to continue this art of punched leather craft tradition, trying to find who would want to continue to work with us and continue with this tradition. We have done several things now. Market research and product development. So we have also shown some high-end brands of bags, and try to show them to our artisans, show the artisans about the quality and the design, to also show them that to reach this level of market, we need a higher level of standard of quality. We've also organized a community of artisans within Yogyakarta to be able to share information and knowledge. And finally, exploring and finding other artisans who make traditional motifs on leather, especially those who have already been in this field before, but might have left it for some reason or another, especially because of the lack of market. So we're trying to approach these artisans and inviting them, come and join Mupakara. And another initiative is to dig deeper into the motifs of traditional, of the craft traditions of Indonesia. So during this time of the pandemic, we know that it's very difficult to sell leather art or craft. So what we try to do is produce smaller products and with a more affordable price. We have a saying that we are trying to guard or protect something, not the ashes, but to keep the flames alive. Not something that has passed, but something that is burning like a flame. Here is our email address and our contact details if you would like to reach us.
We now island hop to Sulawesi. So again, we have a film on Cinta, Bumi, Artisans, edited with the assistance of Partnership.
Nama saya Novi dari Cinta, Bumi, Artisans. Saya sebagai pendiri dan juga desainer untuk beberapa produk. Tahun 2013 itu ada kerjasama dengan sekolah perempuan di Poso, Sulawesi Tengah untuk membuat sebuah pengembangan ekowisata berbasis masyarakat, mencari warisan budaya, khususnya yang non-benda di Lembah Bada, termasuklah Taman Nasional Lorelibu. Waktu saya jalan-jalan ke sana ditemani oleh mantan guru SD berprofesi sebagai pemandu lokal. Pak Agus, namanya Pak Agus Tohama, bunyi tuk 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 dari jauh sekali. Waktu lagi jalan-jalan di area Medan Tipung, itu ternyata adalah perantau atau pembuat kain kulit kayu dari batang kayu benau, dan ini digunakan untuk menumbuk-numbuk kain kulit kayu. Beliau bilang, kamu beruntung sekali karena ini sudah jarang, kurang dari 5 orang yang masih mengerjakan ini untuk di Lembah Bada. Lalu akhirnya saya datangi ke tempatnya, namanya Mamari, yang membuat Mamari ini menceritakanlah bahwa kain kulit kayu ini dibuatnya untuk pesanan orang yang mau menikah. Jadi kalau dulu mereka kenakan ini sebagai pakaian sehari-hari. Kami bertemu dengan Mama Ri dan satu lagi namanya Mama Berry. Setelah saya menggali informasi dari mana-mana, akhirnya saya mulai menarik garis bahwa ini sebenarnya sangat sayang kalau hilang, dan ternyata ini adalah sandang tertuanya Indonesia. Saya bilang sama teman-teman di sana, apakah mau kita membuat sesuatu dengan kain kulit kayu ini, tapi dibuat menjadi sesuatu yang bisa kita kenakan zaman sekarang. Akhirnya kita buat dan bawa ke sana. Mereka juga sempat nggak percaya bahwa itu adalah kain kulit kayunya. Jadi itu tahun 2013, baru 2,5 tahun kemudian berani untuk melaunching produk. Sekarang sudah kurang lebih 6 tahun bekerja sama dengan mama-mama di sana, dan senang sekali yang tadinya anak-anak nggak mau ikut, sekarang udah ada yang masih usia 22 tahun dan mereka aktif membuat kain kulit kayu. Sekarang ada 4 desa yang bekerja sama di Bantul, Lengkeka, Tuare dengan di Bewa. Okay, over to you, Novi.
Hello. Hi, Elaine. Hi, everyone.
Good afternoon from Bali. Thank you for joining our webinar. My name is Novieta and I'm from Cinta Bumi Artisans. One of our signature works, Barkcloth from the Bada Valley. I will share. Okay, so I'll begin with explaining why we started in Central Sulawesi. And our journey began in 2013 when I was still actually a full-time ecotourism practitioner. I was working with a grassroots organization named Mosinto Institute who focus on recovery and healing for women and children in Poso, a region that was and actually is still commonly known as a post-conflict zone. So together we were developing a community-based ecotourism initiative as a part of our efforts in changing the paradigm about Poso from being a post-conflict zone to the land of hope. Among the list of works we did was cultural heritage mapping, which was mainly done in the Bada Valley. So this area consists some parts of the Lorelindo National Park, where most of Central Sulawesi's endemic natural biodiversity can be found. So it's also a place enriched with hundreds of megalithic heritage, as you can see in the slide, and where the centuries-old intangible cultural heritage of barkcloth making, although the existence was vulnerable for a while, is still practiced. So although my work and partnership for the ecotourism initiative was done after 2-year completion, I continued my independent research and exploration around barkcloth, and this also marked the time where I started Cinta Bumi Artisans. These pictures were taken on the day I first time I met Barkcloth Artisans. Her name is Mamari, and I thoroughly observed barkcloth making process. At the time, we could only list less than 10 people, even less than 5, who still regularly make barkcloth in the Bada Valley. And beside me, the one who's wearing hat is Pa Augusto Hama. He's a local guide and a former elementary school teacher, but now he's actually a liaison or artisans coordinator of Cinta Bumi in Bada Valley. So through this barkcloth exploration, we found a lot of fascinating facts about this bast fiber. Started with the texture itself, which is part leathery, part papery. So it's strong and resilient at the same time. So this brought us to comprehensive records that in Central Sulawesi, barkcloth was the daily cloth. It is, in fact, one of the eldest clothing in human history, not only in Indonesia. And this also brought us to learn the general knowledge that in Indonesia, barkcloth existed throughout the archipelago, so from Sumatra to Papua. The difference is for sure around regionalism, species of tree barks, different methods, techniques, equipment and tools, and the function. So for example, although using the exact same type of paper mulberry tree bark, it is called the barkcloth in Central Sulawesi, but it is a bark paper in West Java and Bali. So as you can see, besides the main function as daily attire in Central Sulawesi, the barkcloth was also used as head wraps, sarong, blankets, baby carrier, and sacred cloth for healing journey and consecrations. So similar to the coloring material of barkcloth in most islands in the Pacific Ocean, it used plants and earth pigments. Excuse me. Colors and motifs of the barkcloth depends on the function. So currently, we are still in the documentation process and researching names, meanings of motifs, so that we will understand deeper about the historical significance. So, which is why we deeply respect and have not produced barkcloth products with traditional motifs yet. There are 3 main factors why the existence of barkcloth in Central Sulawesi was vulnerable. So the arrival of cotton and synthetic fibers, religious mission at the end of 19th century, and also practicality and economy. So the common use of barkcloth today is mainly for wedding attires and art performance. In the picture, you see a bride and groom wearing complete barkcloth attires from head to toe, and all were naturally dyed or hand painted. This whole set of wedding attires took 4 months to make, 1.5 months to make the barkcloth, and 2.5 months to paint with plant inks and earth pigments. Originally, there were 18 species of plants being used as barkcloth materials in Central Sulawesi. But with sustainability considerations, we use only 5 of them, locally named Bea, Malo, Nunu, Hohawa, and Tepulu. And of all those 5, the primary material we use is Bea, or paper mulberry. It's the main material that takes 70% of our barkcloth production. And Bea is also the exact same plant for making tapa cloth in Polynesia, kapa in Hawaii, and ote in New Zealand, among others. So it's an Austronesian fruit. The reasons why we chose to primarily use Bea or paper mulberry, first of all, it's truly sustainable material. It grows well in various types of land, and it's actually considered invasive. It takes the plant 8 to 12 months to grow to be ready for harvest, or around 3 to 5 centimeter diameter. As a reference, a 3-meter long bark with this diameter can make a 3 by 1 square meter of barkcloth. Secondly, it has significant meaning and history, where the cloth was mainly worn and used by healers and community leaders. And thirdly, the texture as well as off-white color makes it versatile, both as cloth and paper. It's also the perfect base for dyeing or painting with plants and pigments. These are some of the bark beading tools in Central Sulawesi. The wooden beaters, we call them paboba. It's made of Arenga pinnata wood. The stone with striped beaters are called ike. So the same name as the Maori people called also ike. Made of well-carved marble stones with rounded handles. And in Bada Valley, mostly these tools actually have passed through 3 to 6 generations. The making process of Bea barkcloth started with scraping the outer bark, peeling the bark layer, and then it is washed until clean, which you've seen a lot like in the video that we played earlier. And so then the inner bark is fermented, wrapped with banana leaves for a few to several days. And once it's softened, it's ready for the beating or pounding process in several stages. Air drying and ironing, which is actually beating the finished bark by using a large flattened wooden pestle. And it can only be done and only allowed to be done by a single person from the beginning to the end of the process. These are some rolls of the barkcloth, and the largest roll we've ever made was 5 by 2 meters. So it's by combining 2 pieces of inner bark from the paper mulberry. So after 2 years, 2.5 years of development, we finally launched our first barkcloth collection in June 2016. We focus on creating impactful handmade goods and wearable poetry by fusing 3 core values, which is indigenous wisdom, artisanal craftsmanship, and mindful innovation. These bags were from our early collection, so we developed and presented the barkcloth as the main role and combined it with contemporary, timeless product design. These are also bags from our early collection. And as we evolved with natural dyeing too, we gave the barkcloth a fresh touch with plant dyes, but not by painting on it like the traditional way, but through immersion dyeing. These plants added new colors and fresh nuances, including vibrant shades of blue from indigo, red from noni root bark, yellow from mixture of jackfruit bark and marigold flowers, black from indigo, noni root, and mud, and many others. So we also, recently we also applied contemporary natural dyeing method of eco-printing or bundle dyeing as surface design on barkcloth and blended the barkcloth with ikat handwoven textiles from Toraja, Isumba, Flores, Bali, West Java, and many others to give a special experience of heritage interconnectedness to those who wear or use our products.
So the shape and the patterns of 90% of our products are made with sustainable design principles and zero waste mission. The waste or remaining of cuttings are transformed into smaller collections such as bookmarks, brooch, bracelets, and necklaces. This is just an idea or the progress we're making. Our work has been growing, but we keep learning and are never tired of improving for better. In summary, this is the progress we've made in the past 5 years. So while making progress, undoubtedly there have been challenges and obstacles too, including what have happened recently. And the current situation within our partnering Barkcloth Artisans is 930 people were impacted by the massive flood in March 2020. So that's including 15 artisans and their families. Not only houses were destroyed, but also the equipment and tools for making the barkcloth, which has passed 5 to 6 generations, were flushed by the flood. And so since flood and then COVID-19, the artisans not produce barkcloth as the way they were regularly. And of course, it's much reduced sales being made. So, however, we believe that love, intention, purpose, and healthy collaborations can strengthen us. And this belief brings us to keep flowing. And it has become a reminder about our goals to contribute in sustaining living culture, by regenerating barkcloth artisans and artists, making some community co-creating space. And we are empowered to plant more trees, not only trees for making barkcloth, but also native plants that have significant roles in food root, herbs, and medicinal plants. And we strive for a better roadmap and practice in our zero waste production. We hope to place barkcloth making from being alternative income to sustainable livelihood for the artisans, and being a small business that spread positive, circular, and sustainable impact. Lastly, a further goal is more love from people to living culture, biodiversity, heritage, craftsmanship, and the people that protect and keep them alive. Thank you for walking with us.
Thanks, Novi. Well, that was quite a ride. So we've gone through our 3 speakers. We're now coming to the Q&A session. I see quite a few questions on the chat. For your information, if we do not get to your questions in this webinar, these will be answered via email, so don't be shy, keep those questions coming in. I'm just going to open to the floor. Actually, if anyone wants to ask their question live, just turn on your video and wave at me. No? Okay, Tenny. Oh, just unmute. Okay, wait, let me unmute you.
Unmute.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
Okay, go.
Tenny's my wife's name. My name is Harold.
Hi, Harold. Yeah.
I have a question. It's actually for Pak Sugio about the Wayang. I can try it in Indonesian if that's okay.
Yep.
Pak Sugio, ada banyak beda ini karakter, personality dalam wayang. Ada Semar, ada Gatot Kaca, ada Sri Kandi. Bapak mungkin bisa jelasin sedikit itu, apa bedanya, dan juga dalam proses bikin wayang ada beberapa hal yang misalnya dengan warna atau posisi yang Bapak harus dimasukin dalam wayangnya biar karakter dan personalitinya juga bisa keluar, bisa dilihat.
Okay, so I'll just translate quickly into English, I guess, for the rest of the participants, or Chrissy, is that translated for the rest of the participants? You can look at the chat. Tenny's question is, not Tenny, Harold's question is actually on there, but it's with regards to the characters in Wayang. Basically, whether they all have their distinct characters and how do these characters come out, whether through color, other effects. So yeah, silakan Pak Sagio untuk jawab soalannya.
Iya, di dalam wayang kulit itu macam-macam. Kalau di Jogja itu setiap wayang mempunyai 3 karakter. Jadi karakter orang susah, karakter orang senang, karakter orang lagi marah. Jadi dalam wayang istilahnya dinamakan wondo. Wondo adalah ekspresi saat itu. Itu Semar juga seperti itu, Gatot Kaca juga seperti itu, ada Gatot Kaca Lawung, Gatot Kaca Tadet, terus Guntur. Itu biasanya untuk membedakan ini setiap wondo itu memang dibuat warnanya beda. Sebagai contoh, kalau Gatot Kaca sedang marah itu biasanya dipakai untuk perang, itu biasanya dibuat badannya hitam, mukanya hitam, itu dinamakan wondonya Tadet. Tuh. Kalau Semar itu biasanya ada yang mukanya putih, ada yang mukanya emas, ada yang emas semua. Itu kalau Semar. Kalau Semar khususnya Ponokawan.
So for this character, it's quite flexible. He can be of the color gold or black or green. And that's especially for Ponokawan. There are some characters where you don't have this much of flexibility. For Tewi Woros Kandi, this is a woman. She's like a soldier. She's a soldier and she has the different emotions as presented. And she also comes out when during a war. But the clothing and the colors, there are certain characters like the Dewi, the one that was mentioned. This one you can't make her face black. So they have different styles and meanings, and their expressions also have meanings. What is interesting for these Javanese puppets, especially for the princess, her breasts are made bigger with the philosophy in Jogja that she cares for her children, that she's not able to leave in terms of providing milk to her child. So there's a philosophy behind the forms and the shapes of the wayang.
I'm going to link in now to one of the questions on the chat. It's kind of related. So this question is from Kevin Murray. So Kevin, I recognize your name from the World Crafts Council and Garland magazine, so good to have you with us. So his question is, I would be interested to know if the stories remain the same while Pak Sagio was using different media for wayang, or does he introduce new themes as well?
For the classic wayang, I still use the main pattern, the traditional patterns. I don't innovate with something new. Still using the classic pattern, but just changing colors and materials, because many are not making this kind of traditional wayang anymore. In 1997, I was in Paris to make an exhibition. I didn't bring tools, but I was coloring a wayang using acrylic that I bought while I was there in Paris. I brought it back with me, and I realized after several years the color was still good. So then I thought maybe I should try using this acrylic color in bringing it from a cold country to a warm tropical country. It can still hold its form and quality. He is relating that he knows that using some of the colors, if they bring them to colder countries, that there will be some damage to the color. So with acrylic, I draw on canvas like a paint or on glass. So using the medium of acrylic. So the character, the story of the wayang continues to be the same. It's only the media or the materials that are different.
barkcloth and whether it's waterproof. There are a couple of questions coming through. I know you've just done a post on waterproof on your social media, so maybe you would like to talk us through the durability and waterproofness of barkcloth.
Yes, thank you, Elaine. So bark is not waterproof, it's water resistant. So I learned, for example, like in the video, as you can see, there's some process where the barkcloth was, how do you say it, brushed or painted with mud, and then it's actually being soaked in the river water to make it, to get the mineral from the water and the mud to create black color of barkcloth. So I learned the traditional methods is actually by hand painting it, but the reason why we took 2 years of research and trial and error before we finally were brave enough to launch our collection was because we did a lot of test and true, like for example, doing immersion dyeing, tie dyeing, and even soaking, boiling it, and also steaming it through eco printing and bundle dyeing. And to our amazement, it's actually quite strong. As long as we understand or really know deeply about the characteristic of this material. I mean, it used to be the cloth, right? It used to be the daily attire. That's why there's a reason why our ancestors have these materials as their daily attire, because it's durable enough. But of course, when we talk about durability, it's also back to how we're taking care of that products, because it's made out of the plants and it's a bast fibers, but it's stronger than paper. So I saw also a questions about the synthetic and natural dyeing while working on barkcloth. That's why when I was first coming to BADA, I think I only found two men who still practice the painting, and we call it ranta in the BADA language. So there are 2 painters, and they use earth pigments and plants. But it's also not really an open, how do you say, an open knowledge. It's also an exclusive knowledge. So not all the ranta artisans understand about the dyeing process. So it's still a long way to go. But for now, our productions, like the raw materials, are done in the BADA Valley, and the dyeing process, like for example, for the hand painting, is also done in BADA by the barkcloth artist. But for immersion dyeing and eco printing, or like more contemporary natural dyeing, we do it, actually I do it by my hands in our studios. So it's really a collaborative process.
Okay, and I'll just tie into this question. What are the pros and cons of using natural and synthetic dyes while working on barkcloth? I guess from your end, it's why is it so important for you to be working with natural dyes?
Yes, and I think it's very simple. As simple as natural dyings now has began to rise to prominence. I think in the past 2 to 3 years, in between not only artists but also brands in fashion and in crafts. I think the reason is very clear. Synthetic dyes, even if it's non-azo dyes, it still has chemical properties that are not friendly to the environment. So that's why we chose natural dyeing, and that's why we learned quite hard to document and research, the recipe from the ancestors, and how to actually connect or like bridge this indigenous practice and modern practice, because that's the reality. We're now in the modern lives, and we have to somehow connect the two so that it can supaya bisa berjalan dengan baik.
Okay, and I'll link it to that whilst we're talking about the environment. So there's a question for untuk Mbak Ratri Mupakara, and the question is whether there's any consideration to use non-leather materials in the future. It's a question from Kit Gun, in consideration of the sustainability point of view. Jadi soalan ini untuk Mbak Ratri.
Ya, untuk awal kami, memang kami sedang melakukan pengembangan dari produk yang berbahan dasar kulit, karena kami percaya bahwa durability yang sangat tinggi, dan durability yang sangat tinggi juga bisa dikatakan sebagai sustainability karena tidak memproduksi sampah fashion lebih cepat. Begitu, dan memang kami sedang fokus untuk mengerjakan kerajinan tas kulit dari Jogja, begitu. Ya.
Okay. And I've also got a follow-up question for Mupakara from Ayla Winata, who's a former IHS president. So how does Mupakara ensure high standards in the quality of its products?
Ya, untuk memastikan adanya kualitas yang tinggi,
ensure that there is good quality standards for our products. We try to be accurate in all the steps, especially in measuring different materials, and we ensure that the material are of very good quality as well as the tools are good quality. And in each step, we try to have quality control in cutting the pattern, in sewing pattern, in each. This is one way we can guard the quality of Mupakara products. But if there are those who are not satisfied with our products, we feel it's okay. You can give it back to us, and we will improve it and give it back to you. And this has happened. Somebody was not satisfied with the finishing; it was not fine enough. So we asked them to give it back to us, and we have improved the quality.
Okay, so I'll just ask one question to Pak Sagio again then. And the question, let me see. So it's a question from Kim, and the question is whether Pak Sagio receives commissions for complete Wayang Kulit sets of puppets, or whether puppet creators specialize in certain characters or are trained and able to carve, or whether they're trained and able to carve all characters.
Maybe for all Wayang artisans, maybe 50% of all the characters they're able to deliver and make, but not 100% of all the characters and all their expressions.
Questions, but those will be answered on an email coming back to you. So thank you everyone for your interest. So we're now coming to the end, but stay on the line. There's still quite a few important announcements to make. I'll just invite the speakers to give their closing statements. Jadi Pak Sagio mau perkenalkan untuk memberi kata penutup.
All those here who care about Javanese puppets Wayang. I hope that in the next generation, there are those that can continue and that can continue to love our culture and this tradition that has been recognized by the UNESCO itself as something that has been practiced by our ancestors. Thank you very much. I don't know what to say, but I am very thankful for this opportunity today to be able to introduce Mupakara to more people and a larger audience.
Oke, terima kasih Elaine, dan terima kasih untuk semua yang sudah bergabung dalam webinar ini. Saya secara
webinar, for me personally, as an organization Cinta Bumi Artisans, that we're happy that we can be able to share about Ranta, this bark cloth from the Bada Valley in Sulawesi. And we hope that this can continue to inspire and develop the care and interest of those that are here through my presentation. I see that there are some people who are here from Banda and are joining this session, and I'm very happy and proud that you're here as well. So we try to update in our website and in Instagram in terms of our activities.
Privileged to be somewhere like Indonesia, and I can say this as a non-Indonesian, where you really get a sense of how strong the cultural roots are. If you've been attending these series of lectures, it becomes clear that a cloth is never just a cloth, a puppet is never just a puppet, and it's also wonderful to be able to find the younger generation paying respect to these roots whilst applying the contemporary outlook and renewing these crafts. And that's come through today for me in these three speakers.